5, 4. You see it counting down? 2, 1. Ring, 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 ring. Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, Brent Campbell, the Brent Campbell official? Brent Campbell official. Hey.
Where did you get that from? Like, what?
Don't ask too many questions.
Okay.
Don't ask too many questions.
All right.
I got my honey hole. I got my honey holes where I find weird stuff.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's my life as a vintage toy collector, and then I just come across stuff like that, and then I just grab it. You know. Brent,
just noticed that. I just noticed that there's like a freaking.
The backdrop.
Yeah. What's his name? Mr. T.
Oh yeah. Yes,
okay.
Mr. T.
There's questions I have to ask you too. So, anyways, but go on. No worries, but.
All right, Brent Campbell, the one and only, coming at us from where? You're in Virginia somewhere?
I'm in Suffolk, Virginia right now, in a room cleverly positioned so people don't realize I'm moving, but there's like boxes and stuff, so we'll be out of here in a couple days. But
don't let the people know.
Yeah.
Don't let them know.
Mm-mm.
Don't let them know that there's a mess behind you. And so you're moving?
Yeah, moving. Just like 15 minutes away. Okay. Yeah, not far. Just out of an apartment into a home, which is our first house. So
first house, and you're crazy. 29.
I wish I was 29. I'm 30.
What?
I'm 30.
Okay. All right.
I'm 30. Yep.
And you got married 2 years ago?
Actually, it was just 3. Yeah, we got married right as the pandemic hit. Like,
beautiful.
Our wedding was the last thing at the venue before they shut everything down. Yeah.
Wow. Snuck it in. So it must have been like March.
Yeah, it was March 8th.
There you go.
It was March 8th. Yeah, man. And then we found out we're all going to die. And apparently we'll die from toilet paper. Like, lots of toilet paper. You remember that?
The toilet paper thing.
Because Brittany and I were celebrating, a honeymoon. Well, we went to a cabin or whatever in the mountains. We come back down and the world's over. It's like, we're all going to die. How? We don't know. It's this virus. It's going to kill everyone. And get milk and toilet paper. And I was like, does it, I guess you poop a lot. No. So what do we need to, we don't know, but we're just getting toilet paper because everyone else is. It was wild. I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard a theory about why it went crazy. Like in the beginning, like what the catalyst was for that going crazy, which was the fact that if you go to the grocery store to get some toothpaste, let's say, it takes up very little shelf space, like the real estate on a shelf. So it's not like you're walking by, you're like, oh my gosh, they're out of toothpaste. You can totally tell. It's much less noticeable compared to giant containers of toilet paper. And then people reacted and went, uh-oh, where's the toilet paper? And that apparently was the catalyst.
That makes so much sense. Because that's true. If you walk down the aisle and there's like either all the water's gone or the toilet paper's gone, you're like, I think we're all gonna die. What's going on? What did I miss? So that's.
But we're still here.
But we're still here. Man,
we're doing a podcast.
We're doing a podcast.
Oh, Brent, when did I first meet you? 5 years ago? 6 years ago? 7?
It would have been, I think 6 years. I think maybe 7. It might have been 7, but. It can't be much more because I had just moved to Charlotte in 2016. I don't think I wasn't connected in any way with Lake Forest or anything until 2017 probably. So
Right.
Late
and where'd you move from?
I moved from Wilmington. Well, technically I'd moved from Virginia. I was in Virginia for a year in the same area, but really it's from Wilmington, North Carolina, which is where I went to college and high school and where I grew up, really.
I did an assembly at Laney High School one time in Wilmington.
Really?
Michael Jordan's high school.
And you survived.
I did.
Incredible.
And in the middle of their basketball court is a 16-foot wide Jordan logo. And me not realizing it didn't click.
Didn't know it was his,
I said, why is there a Jordan logo in the gym? I was so perplexed. and they said, "Oh, Michael Jordan went here, and then he helped fund like revamping the gym. So we put the logo in the middle." And I went, "Makes
Yeah,
sense."
that adds up.
Yeah,
I'll let it happen.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't go to any, but we played against them a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
What? So you said played against? Were you on the golf team,
Yeah,
swim
golf, bro.
team, field
Golf. I
hockey?
can't even do freaking top golf. Like, I'm gonna tear a labrum in my shoulder. No, I played football and I ran track.
Okay.
And
what
I
position?
ran track in college. Football, left bench, right bench, a little middle for a little bit there.
You're telling my story right now because I
Yeah,
played
I
football.
watched other people play. I was really good at that. I got
Yeah.
really good at that. I was a starter at watching other people.
Dude,
yeah.
I had dreams of being the punter for the JV football team in San Diego. And I would practice in the field behind my house over and over and over. I didn't even make it as the punter. But then I was a wide receiver and a DB. And I thought I was big in lacrosse at the time. So I thought, oh, I'll just play on the football team to stay in shape. And a couple of the buddies that I had at school talked me into playing football. My neighbor next door behind us was the quarterback for JV. His name was Travis. And so I finally get in the game. Finally. This is the third game of the season. I finally get in the game on offense. He looks at me. He's like, coming right at you. And I was like, it sure is, because we're boys. You're my neighbor. Let's go. And I ran the wrong route and it got intercepted. And then I quit. I was like, I'm good.
My gosh.
I'm good.
I was so bad I couldn't quit. That's how bad I was. I was so bad. It was
you had a lot of splinters in your hind end, though.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I was terrible at that. But
yeah.
But it all worked out in some way, shape, or form because I ran track in college as a D1 athlete, and people on my high school football team were like, "Wait, really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "No, seriously." And it's because I was like, I got really good at track in a very short amount of time, so fast nobody knew. So
wow,
yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
Well, that's a story for another podcast.
It is. It is.
But we had been. Before we press record, we had been exploring a few ideas for a moment that made you that we could dig into. And we landed on one that involves a certain TV channel, a certain website, a certain media news outlet, if you will.
Well,
and it has...
actually, we decided on the earlier
Oh my gosh,
one.
you're right.
For that too.
Oh,
I mean, they're related.
We'll cut that out in post.
Yeah, when I was younger. This would have been in middle school. Okay.
Well, all right, Brent, now we're going to have to do 3 of these. So just mark off your calendar for like 2 weeks from next Thursday. All right, you're right. We talked about when you were a kid and something very significant happened.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to dive into. So let's set it up. What's going on so far in Brent's life?
Set it up. This would have been 7th grade.
Okay.
Both of my parents are they were Marines.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up as a military brat. I'm originally from Oceanside, California, and then was moving around to different parts of North Carolina, and had just moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. So that year. And I just always really grew up in extremely diverse community. You know, it was the military. Like everything was in the military. You didn't really think so much about ethnicity and things like that. I mean, there was a small bit of that, but it just didn't. It was that you're all Marine kids, Marine brats.
Yeah. So I grew up a Navy brat.
You did mention that last time we were talking. Yeah. So you get it. I mean, it's just like pretty diverse, and you told me some of your story, right, of how you end up. The weird thing about being in the military, right? You'll end up randomly in some spot, and now you're the weird one, right? Like, so it was a bit like that. Parents. So I've grown up, really sort of normal Marine or military sort of kid, super diverse. Was always moving to different schools, making friends. I'm a twin, so I brought my friend with me. So that made things a whole bunch easier. But either way, my dad gets out of the military and feels like he's supposed to become a pastor. And so he ends up pastoring at this church in Wilmington, North Carolina. And so we moved there. And that's when I learned that I was like black and that meant something. I mean, I knew that I was black because I can see.
Right.
And my parents made that obvious to me all the time. You know, like my mom was always saying, as long as you're, you know, black and a child of God, you're gonna do what I, you know, do what I say. So it wasn't so much that, it was more that being black was just a thing I was kind of proud of. I don't know. It wasn't like it is now. It was kind of like, oh, that's good. And there wasn't much downside to it. And my parents were really careful about filling our head with stereotypes. They were really, really, like, they didn't like that. They didn't want us to think about ourselves primarily as like black people first. It was kind of like, that's important and that's going to shape your life, but it's like not the most important thing. They didn't want us to have knee-jerk reactions to other groups of people. Like, and that's probably easier because of the military. But I just wasn't raised super race conscious except in certain situations. And then everything in my life was black. My family was black. My aunties and uncles were black. We went to a black church. We were there for 8 hours just like it was black. Everything was black. Right? And
did Dad use a little towel when he preached?
Two. And he still does. And he still does. Okay.
Yes.
This bald head, and he's like slow. Yes. You know, like a window pane.
Yes.
So you know, it was great, and I didn't have any like super negative or even positive experiences with that. It was just a thing. I moved to Wilmington. It is a lot more segregated than I'm used to. It's not really a military community anymore. I'm one of the only kids in my class, or only kids of color in my class. And that wasn't super new, but it was more stark, like 1 out of 27 versus, you know, a couple out of however many. Right? So either way, I end up having this encounter in my middle school class that sort of changes my whole worldview. And I don't know if I should just dive right in or if it would be good for me to pause. But it was a really pivotal moment.
Yeah.
How I saw myself in the world.
Where was your twin when you experienced this? Was he right there with
you? No,
because
he was smarter. He was smarter. So he was in the advanced classes.
Oh, okay.
It took me a while to catch up. And he would make fun of me, which is...
You think maybe he just applied himself more?
No, he's way lazier. No, he's so much lazier. And we would both agree. He's like, yeah, Brent works harder, and he's better with, you know, in certain areas, and I'm smarter, and, you know, there's no there. He's just, no, he's really
just
smart.
A natural.
It's very frustrating.
Okay.
Yeah. So
here we go.
Yeah. So either way, I'm in social studies. Which is a nonsense class. Nobody knows what that is. You know, it's like, what does that mean? Right. But we're in social studies, and we were doing some project. I don't know what it was, but we were doing some project, and we didn't finish in time. And so the, you know, 7th grade isn't, or at least at the time, wasn't the time you have take-home projects. That's like a high school thing.
Right, right.
But for whatever reason, the teacher was just like, hey, how about you guys finish this up? We ran out of time. Why don't you go to each other's houses and you finish it up, and we'll present some other time. So we had these groups, and they're getting together, and we're all excited, high-pitched, squeaky 7th graders high-fiving and whatever. And then I'm in this group, only black kid in the group, and only black kid in the class. So anyways, I had to be the only black kid in the group. And everyone's like, hey, we're going to go to my house. We figured out who it was, and everyone's excited. And so it seemed like everyone else knew where he lived. And I was like, oh, I'm new. Of course I don't know. So I was like, so where do you live? Like, how do I get there? And he's like, well, you can't come. And I was like, why? And he's like, because you're black. And I was like, oh. And I said, I'm sorry. I remember I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I was so embarrassed. Like, how did I not realize I'm black and that is apparently a bad thing, you know, like so that was like, I mean, that's 7th grade. I started school early, so I don't know how old I was, maybe 10 or 11. But it was this huge moment where and became something of a pattern, I would say as well. But it became this moment where it's like, oh, I'm black, and that's not a good thing. It had never not been a good thing in some way, right? It never been not big of a thing, but when it was a thing, it was positive. Like, hey, we're black. We in church right now. That's what black people do. Okay, great.
Right.
We have fish cook-offs after church. That's what black people do. Awesome. We play spades till 2 a.m. That's what black, whatever. It was just a part of a culture. And this was the first time that it was like, oh, you can't do this. You can't be here.
So were the other kids, like, was it the whole group standing there and the one whose house it was said it and the others heard it? Because I'd be intrigued at how they responded.
Yeah, well, it was, even at the time, I recognized I didn't have any sense it was like malicious. You know what I'm saying? It was almost like, it would be like if you said, hey, I'm going to go into the girls' bathroom. They were like, what are you talking about? You can't go in the girls' bathroom. It's for girls.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
Like, it wasn't,
sure.
There's nothing malicious. And so it was like awkward. It's that awkward moment where kids are having to inform someone of something that they should already know. And so, yeah, the one guy, he said it, but it wasn't just like, they're like, oh, they're like, yeah. Like, it was kind of like, you don't know this? And it was like, oh, no, I don't know this. And so, and I mean, that's the really interesting thing. At the time, I didn't have language for it. And, I mean, that would have been in, I don't know, like 2006 or 8 or something. I don't know, whatever. So there wasn't language like systemic racism or whatever you want to call it, institutionalized. But that's probably what I would call it now. Like, they're just like, they weren't mean. They weren't jerks about it. They're just like, this is just how it goes. Like, how did you not know this? And it was just kind of like the rule. Like, they picked up that's the rule, right? And so later in the year, so it became something of a pattern. And I would say by the time I left 7th grade, I realized, oh, okay, being black is not good. So I had friends. I'd call their houses and say, hey, like, I need homework. I need something. And I had a friend call her house, did that. She answers the phone, and when she realizes it's me, she hangs up, right? And so I'm like, oh, dang it, like, I don't have the homework. Oh, what am I going to do? Right. Next day in class, because, it was back when you sit according to your name or whatever in school, so we were friends because we had to be, like, right. And so I'm like, why did you hang up on me? I really need the homework. You're trash. Like, dang. Yeah. And she's like, you can't call my house anymore. And I was like, why? And she's like, because you're black. And I was like, oh. So it was like a thing I learned.
This is in 2006.
Yes.
This is not in 1976. 2006.
Yeah. It was kind of wild, right?
Yeah, my brain hurts right now.
Yeah, it's like, and it was a shock to me too, because obviously it's definitely, there's layers that are probably normative across all of maybe America, but some of it's just where you live. I was living in Wilmington now, which has its own history, and just like every city. But yeah, it was, and in fact, I had lived in more rural parts of North Carolina before and hadn't experienced that. Maybe because country, whatever. There's just different dynamics probably at play. But this was the first time where it was like, oh, like, you're black, and that's not good. And so, I mean, I could retell that story over and over the next couple of years in different ways, but yeah, I would say growing up in Wilmington was when I learned, like, oh, being black is not a great thing. It's a thing you need to overcome. And so by the time later, even worse racial incidents or things would come across, it was kind of like, oh, well, it's just like, what do you expect? And I would say it changed me. It was pivotal, partly because it changed my point of view, kind of introduced me to this new thing I had to manage as a kid growing up, and had to try and figure out. But it also made me hate white people. Like, it took me a long time. Obviously, I don't feel that way now. Hey, Mike. But I mean, it took me a long. It was really hard for me to. I felt like I just became a very racist person, too. So it not only changed my perspective about myself and kind of how I needed to navigate, but it changed the way I looked at the people around me. And I'd say probably for the next close to 10 years, I was just a pretty racist person, in really not great ways. I mean, just was. So I can also see how easy it is, like to how easy it can take place. But yeah,
isn't that the craziest piece of the puzzle for the USA? Is that it's the melting pot. It's and you take a step back sometimes, and you're like, we're not that old. We're only a couple hundred years, and to think that you can just take people from so many different cultures, smash them all together, and expect them to naturally just create a new culture, like to leave behind what they left behind and create a new culture where everybody's on board together. Like, this is us. We don't care where you came from, but once you come here, you're us now. You're not that anymore. But there's so much of hanging on to, oh, well, my roots and my heritage and my...
And that's why the military is such
complicated.
It is. It is complicated because you would need something greater than those ties to bind us, right? Like you need, and it's probably not a coincidence that patriotism is so high when the towers fell, and different like huge sort of strife in America, because you need something bigger than those things to sort of be like, oh, we can put that aside for a bit. And that was partly why the shock was so intense. Because I just grew up up to that point. I had a white uncle who I did not know was not really my uncle, because kids are kids. And like, he came to pick me up from school one day, and they're like, "Who is that?" I'm like, "That's my Uncle Dean." This is like the whitest white guy. They're like, "Are you sure? He's like, which side is he on? Your mom?" I'm like, "I think he's my dad's brother." They're both bald. So I'm like, I guess I just didn't know, right? Because in the military, it becomes like whoever is around, like, you know who your family is because they're willing to suffer with you. That's how you know who your family is. So yeah, it was something of a culture shock. My dad would come to pick me up from school, and he drove a Lexus, and my friends said that they're like, "Is your dad a drug dealer?"
Oh my gosh!
I was like, no. So it's just these little, and the kids are kids, right? Like, they don't. It probably has more to do with their parents and their environment than them, really, right? Because they're just kind of sponges, but just these ideas.
Yeah, for sure. Woo! So,
cheers.
Yeah, cheers. I think I was telling you when I saw you in person a couple weeks ago that one of the only times where I even had a taste of something even remotely similar was when we were stationed in Hawaii, and I was one of 5 Caucasian kids in my class, and everyone was either Asian Hawaiian or Hawaiian, and then there were a couple black kids, and then there was me. And funny story, Dean was one of the other. Maybe that's your uncle.
It's probably my uncle. It's got it's only one white Dean.
Yeah, but then it was like me, Brian, and Dean, and one girl named Sarah. That might have been it in the entire 6th grade class. And I remember we were on a field trip at a beach somewhere, and I remember the guy who was like the chaperone. I didn't know who he was. He called me Howley Boy, and everyone laughed. And he said, "Get in the back of the line, Howley Boy," which is not a compliment when you're in Hawaii. And I was like, gulp, thanks, in front of everybody. And that happened a few times, where someone would call me that. And I was like, it's weird. Like, when you're apparently in Japan, I think, like, it's actually popular to bleach your skin because you want to appear paler. Like, that's a compliment. And then in the US, for people that tan, you know, it's, oh, you got such a nice tan or
Yeah.
whatever. Uh, like everyone has these different things where it's assumed that that's more pretty or more handsome, whatever, more attractive.
Yeah.
But I would stop on my bike on the way to school, like right outside the school, because everyone wore flip flops um, at school, or sandals, whatever they would just call them, sandals. And I would stop and rub dirt all over my feet so I wouldn't look
Really?
so pale, because
It's wild.
I felt so
Yeah.
out of it, you know? And so I'm like, maybe I can just not look so different. But that's the one thing where I had a
But you
taste
get it. Yeah. I mean,
of
it's,
what you're
you,
getting
you
at.
get
Yeah.
it. I mean, you get it
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, um,
I sure
but
didn't feel great about who I was.
it's not awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that people in those situations, at least there's kind of these memes about the token black kid, right? You kind of go one of two paths of
Mm,
like, um, I'm the white black kid and I own that, whatever that means, right?
sure.
And I just couldn't go there. For me, it turned into bitterness. It was never like, oh, I'll just lean in, you know. It was like, no, I hate white
Mm-hmm.
people, and I hate the fact that they think that I'm white because I'm smart or because I'm articulate. I hate them. I hate it. I hate it. Right? Like, so it just made me a very bitter. It was obviously I didn't have very good coping skills. I didn't really talk about it,
Right.
except with my brother, right? And
Right.
so it just turned into
Now,
bitterness.
did you find yourself being like, it's us against the world? Like, it's us black folk against the world. Like, as far as Hispanics, Asian Americans, like any other
No,
like
it was like
skin
it's us
tone, or
brown folk.
it was just
Anybody who's not white, it's us against all the white
got you,
people.
got
You
you.
know,
Yeah.
um, but then there are layers to that as well because you end up in this weird cross section of Miguel has a song. It's like what's normal anyways. He's like too. I don't know what his particular epithets are, but he's like too Mexican for the black kids, too
Mm-hmm.
black for for the white kids, too whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking
Mm-hmm.
about like I'm not enough, and I kind of felt that way, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I had previously gone to schools and had just great relationships with black people. So when I'm in this new environment, I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to hang out with the black people, but now I'm weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a whole different cultural dynamic because they're like, why are you in those classes? And like, why do you talk like that? And
Right.
in my more diverse, and I think it's because we don't have time to go into it now, but I think it just has to
Mm-hmm.
do with population densities. When I
Mm-hmm.
was in schools where they are more diverse,
Mm-hmm.
it was more like my mom says I should hang out with you because you're doing well at school. It was different,
Mm-hmm.
way different, way different. And then
Mm-hmm.
when it's like, and maybe that's when black people make up 70% of the school, and then when it's down to 5 or 10, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, bro, you're not one of us. Like, so that was weird too. I felt lost for a while, and that didn't
Yeah.
change till I got good at sports, which is a tragedy in and of itself. But
Yeah.
another time,
And then thank the maker that you and I have a bigger identity than any of this.
for sure.
Whether we're Americans, whether we drive Toyotas, whether we shop at this place, shop at that place,
I
wear
do
this
drive a
brand,
Toyota. If you know, you know.
wear that brand, listen to this kind of music. Because then there's always all the cliques that form in school because of your subgroups. Like, oh, that's the hip hop kids. Oh, that's the punk rock kids. Oh, that's the goth kids or whatever. And it's just so nice when you can finally rise above all of
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
all that mess, and find an identity that can never be taken away, that's
yeah. It
unshakable.
doesn't change. You feel like you're coming home. But
Yeah.
this is what those other things were serving, right? It's not like they're not important, but they're an ingredient, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the dish. It's not the dish, right?
Yeah.
And trying to live off of like this ingredient, and it's like, man, this isn't really working. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
doing for me what I need. And it's like, oh yeah, now I'm tasting the whole thing. Terrible analogy, but yeah, I'm with you.
So my final question, and then we'll land the plane. My final
Cool.
question would be this, because I'm curious what your perspective would be. Is it more advantageous for you and me? Let's use a very small cross section. You and me, Brent. Is it more advantageous for us to be oblivious to skin color, or to celebrate each other's skin color or cultural background or upbringing or family heritage? Is it more advantageous to be oblivious or to celebrate it?
I mean, I think celebration, right, the problem is at the margins, there's errors along each, it's whichever spectrum you want to go far enough down, you'll run into a hole, right? But I think it would be celebration, because in one sense it'd be kind of weird, right? I think, like, when I see a tall woman, like a young girl who's over 6 foot,
right,
I automatically know that her life has been different. There's no way her life hasn't been different, and it makes me sensitive to certain things. There's jokes I probably wouldn't say. There's even stories I can almost, maybe not with 100% accuracy, but 99% accuracy, I can say, oh yeah, she probably grew up feeling this way because she's taller than all the boys, and she probably
everybody expects her to play basketball,
or volleyball. There's all these things, right? And I can get pretty close, and it would be weird if I didn't notice that this girl was 6'3", and I acted like that hadn't affected her life. It would also be weird if every time I was around her, I was like, "Hey, you
hey, by the way,
you ran her with a face. Hey,
By the way, you remember that you're really tall?
Did you
remember that? Yeah.
So I think at best, I mean, celebration is the best. I think that's what we, that's what we kind of want, right? Like, we want to be celebrated for who we are, and for that to be valued.
Well, why would the Bible itself talk about heaven being every tribe and tongue? Why would it even use that language? Why wouldn't it just say we're all going to be there?
Yeah.
Why would it say specifically every tribe and tongue? Because there's a point to it.
There's value.
There's a point to the diversity.
I was actually talking with a friend who's trying to figure out his faith, and he's just having a lot of trouble processing current cultural stuff. He's just like, this is crazy liberal, and they want me to camp out on these things that don't matter and whatever. And we're talking, and I was like, well, that's kind of an overreaction, because like, I know you're not convinced yet of some of this, but like in heaven, he's intrigued, like he's open. I was like, but in heaven, like, your ethnicity and your sex, you're gonna have at least those two things, right? Those are those are gonna exist forever. So you can't say it doesn't matter, but it matters to God. But you just have to figure out, how does it matter, in what ways, why, right? And so I think you're right. There's something really special. At least if you follow the God of the Bible, like, there's apparently, this is on purpose, it's not an accident, and it's meant to be used for good in some way, even though
Brent, we're out of time.
Yeah, man.
But we got to do this again, because we got more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I want to know about your Mr. T. Like, I can't stop staring at it over your shoulder. I just cannot stop. I really can't,
bro.
Yes.
Oh, there goes the Dunkin' Donuts. Look at the gentle giant.
Whoa.
The feather earrings.
Whoa. Back in his prime.
Still in the box. Look at the fit, though.
Yo.
His fit is kind of fire.
Logic.
Yep.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
That's the kind of stuff I collect.
I'm sure it will be worth $1 billion one day.
It probably is. At least $1 billion.
Yeah.
All right, bro.
Well, thanks for having me, bro. This is awesome.
It's been great.
Yep.
And I will talk to you real soon. Have a great night.
See ya.
Good luck moving.
Yes. I need it. Bye.
Yep. Later.